So when I was in college, I took a class called literary journalism. And in that class, we learned how to create in-depth profiles on people using, effective reporting skills and interview techniques. And one of our first assignments for this class was that we had to choose a story that we thought was an example of effective reporting on a character or a situation. We had to write about it and then share it with the class, and I chose an article from BuzzFeed News by Michelle Dean called "Dee Dee Wanted Her Daughter to Be Sick. Gypsy Wanted Her Mom Murdered." For those of you who aren't familiar with Dee Dee and Gypsy's story, this murder case took place in 2015 and this article was published in 2016. So this was, before the true crime industrial complex got a hold of it. And I remember what struck me about reading this article was not only obviously the fascinating story behind it, but how well the story was told and how effectively it was reported. We got to know Dee Dee and Gypsy as characters, for lack of a better term, through the in-depth interviews conducted with people who were able to accurately paint a picture of their personal dynamic and the impact that it had on the community at large. And that's why the details and how the murder unfolded are so gripping and disturbing, because it seems like something that could only be written in a really bad Lifetime movie. But the thing that was notable about the reporting in this particular instance was that it wasn't really sensationalized in any way. The writer didn't paint Gypsy as somebody to be gawked at or a reality show character. And it discussed these serious topics like Munchausen syndrome or, general parental abuse with the amount of proper context and nuance needed for, the clarity of this situation. I guess I should clarify that while everybody did this assignment, only a few of the pieces that people in the class chose were highlighted for our in-class discussion. And one of those pieces was a Washington Post article recounting a very graphic and brutal sexual assault scenario. Not what I would have chosen personally. A lot of people in the class felt uncomfortable discussing it, but the professor at the time thought it would make for a more interesting discussion. And if that isn't a metaphor for how we discuss true crime media and reporting as a whole, I don't know what is. There was a lot of fuck shit going on in this class, by the way. If you are one of the 3 people in that class who I know for a fact watches my videos, I'd love to hear from you in the comments because you know exactly what the fuck I'm talking about. And yes, the chicken farm stock footage is an inside joke for precisely those 3 people. But ultimately, my point here is that the Gypsy-Rose Blanchard case is interesting and intriguing, and it always has been, especially if you are a quote-unquote fan or enthusiast of true crime. And there are concrete examples of this story being told in a respectful and accurate way that don't lead into sensationalist or insensitive narratives that give the victim little to no agency. But during her time in prison and post-release, Gypsy's story has become a bit of a clown show.
Can't bring me down. I'm on a high right now. I'm living my best life, and y'all can't take that from me.
And the D is
fire. I don't care.
I get it. Then delete it.
If all you care about is
don't.
money.
I don't. Delete it then.
Oh, honey, I am so not threatened by you. My man wouldn't touch you with a 10-foot pole. My man with a 10-foot pole. My man wouldn't touch you with a 10-foot pole. My man with a 10-foot pole.
Quick recap for those who are completely out of the loop. Although I assume that if you clicked on this video, you are at least somewhat familiar with the Gypsy-Rose case. Gypsy-Rose Blanchard is perhaps the most famous victim of Munchausen by proxy. Her mom essentially forced her to pretend that she was sick for the first 20-something years of her life. She was subjected to tons of unnecessary medical procedures and unwanted medications. She was also physically abused and reprimanded for trying to run away. And all of this resulted in Gypsy and her then boyfriend at the time making and executing a plan to kill her mother, posting about it on Facebook, running away, and being found later, and both of them were sentenced to prison for murder. Gypsy did not get as long of a prison sentence as her accomplice because Gypsy was a victim of Dee Dee's abuse. And also for a couple of other more complex legal reasons, the trial is very, thoroughly documented.
Bought these new shoes.
Gypsy-Rose was released from prison on December 28th, 2023. And in that time, there were several documentaries made, several true crime reenactment series, which I've talked about this on the channel before, but I really don't like those. Stuff like Dahmer, and specific to this case, The Act on Hulu. I just think that 99% of the time, there is journalism and documentary work out there that is much more sufficient if you're actually interested in learning about a case. But all of the coverage of her case in that time got people very interested in what her life was going to be like post-release, because she spent the first third of her life as essentially a prisoner in her own home, and then spent the next 10 years of her life actually being a prisoner. When I first heard that she was going to get released, I was rooting for her. I really truly was. I was hoping that she was going to be reunited with her dad's side of the family, and that maybe she would be given better access to, mental health resources and connections that would ultimately help her restart her life. Because I think the thing that people forget, especially now, and we'll get into why, is that Gypsy-Rose was a victim. Yes, she, committed a murder and generally speaking, murder bad, but she did murder her abuser and was the victim of a crime that is so unfathomable for many of us. But as a free woman, Gypsy-Rose has since officially gotten married, gotten divorced, got remarried, and is now pregnant with the second husband's baby. And we know all of the intimate details and timeline of this narrative because since getting released from prison, Gypsy-Rose has been profiled on a Lifetime documentary series called Life After Lockup. I unfortunately cannot play clips from this series, especially like a lot of the more recent episodes, because of copyright reasons. However, if you Google Lifetime Gypsy-Rose, like the clips will come up. And it's clear by the comments on all of these videos that Gypsy-Rose is now officially a reality TV show character. This docu-series is shot and, framed and edited like a reality show, and people are treating it as such. And you can argue, obviously, that Gypsy does have a hand in this because she had to, consent to being filmed for this series, and also when it comes to her personal social media, she does post on there publicly. But it's very clear to me that she is, speed running through all of the stages of life, which makes sense because she didn't have a normal childhood, and the majority of her formative years were spent in prison. But the thing that really bothers me about this whole situation is that Gypsy-Rose's public antics have caused people to question whether or not she actually has been a victim of anything at all. If she was just a lying and manipulative person from the start, if she deserved her incarceration and her abuse and every single bad thing that has happened to her. And the answer to that is no, but because she's being exploited by reality television show producers, and yes, even if she did consent to that, she is still being exploited by them, there is so much access being given to the intimate details of her life that people feel like they can judge her accordingly as if she's like a regular, well-adjusted person. I'm not the first person to bring this up, but Gypsy-Rose is not a perfect victim. A perfect victim is essentially a person who has never done anything wrong in their life and who portrays the ideals of vulnerability and purity. And so when it comes out that they are abused, no one can come back and say, oh, this is because of your previous behavior. Oh, this is because you deserved it. Gypsy-Rose has made some very questionable decisions in her personal life that I have had the misfortune of watching and being subjected to since she got released from prison. I shouldn't know about any of them. She should ideally be living a private life with her family. She probably should not be bringing a child into this world, considering she has such little experience living life as a free woman. And yes, she probably manipulated both of the men that she has been romantically involved with, because not only did she grow up under the control of a manipulative abuser, but she also probably learned that manipulation in turn as a survival tactic. Is Gypsy-Rose Blanchard a bad person? At the end of the day, I truly don't think that it fucking matters. Because the reason why people tune in to watch her series on Lifetime is, the reason that most people tune in to watch any kind of garbage bottom tier reality TV. It's to make yourself feel better. It's to look at this clown show and go, wow, this girl is truly a terrible person based on the events that I have watched unfold. I am so glad that I am better at being a human being than her. Me in my well-adjusted environment with 2 parents and a Range Rover and a flat screen TV to watch true crime documentaries on. It's definitely not rotting my brain from the inside out and limiting my ability to see quote-unquote problematic women as people. Now, if you'll excuse me, I'm going to go post on TikTok about how I, a white woman in an affluent community, believe that I was a victim of human trafficking in a Target shopping center because somebody left a Reese's peanut butter cup wrapper on my car. Now, this was all pissing me off because if you can't tell, I don't think that there's any reason to have a moral superiority complex over a woman who was a victim of Munchausen by proxy, served her time for it, and was clearly released into the world with ill-equipped resources to be able to handle real life. Like, I don't know, I just feel like there are other people in the world that I could easily dunk on that would give me that same satisfaction. JD Vance is right there, bro. He's right there. But the reason why I decided to make a video about this today is because there are newly released photos. Jesus Christ, I feel like a news anchor delivering this information. Hold on, let me do the full bit. Welcome back. Thank you for joining us. There is outrage tonight after gruesome crime scene photos of Dee Dee Blanchard's murder were leaked online. You might remember that back in 2015, Blanchard was murdered by her daughter Gypsy-Rose in a Munchausen by proxy case that drew national attention. This comes as Gypsy-Rose, released from prison last year, celebrated her 33rd birthday on Saturday. For those of you who don't know, that's like basically my whole day. My real job is that I write stuff that sounds like that for other people to say on TV. But yeah, basically there are these resurfaced super graphic crime scene photos from the night that Gypsy murdered Dee Dee. And this is how I know that a lot of people aren't actually interested in like learning the facts of the case, because this information was out there and readily available. Like, Dee Dee was absolutely murdered in a very gruesome way. Like, the person doing that crime absolutely executed it in a way where they, you know, insisted that the pain be felt. And I am not excusing that. I am not excusing Gypsy for going along with it. But one, Gypsy served her time for this crime. Two, her mother was still an abuser. In fact, there is an image circulating online right now of Gypsy naked in a bathtub with her head fully shaved, taken from a time where Dee Dee was still alive and essentially performing medical experiments on her. I'm not going to show it in this video for TOS reasons, obviously. And three, Dee Dee's own family hates her so fucking bad that when they got her ashes back, they literally flushed them down the toilet.
You think she got what she deserved?
Yes.
Yeah, she got what she deserved.
She got cremated. She said, "What you want me to do with the ashes?" Everybody said, "I don't want her. I don't want her."
Flush them.
I told, "Flush that in the toilet. I'm not paying for it. You can't afford it." I said, "Flush it in the toilet."
I think my main issue here is that people ultimately don't want to engage with the, for lack of a better word, gruesome aspects of the true crime stories that they consume. Because when you watch it through the lens of like a TikToker doing their makeup or Patricia Arquette trying to get an Emmy, there's very much a desensitizing aspect to it that when something like this happens, your primal instinct is to go, "What do you mean my own little reality TV show character with her adorable TikTok remix did something bad? I thought she just existed in a vacuum for my own personal amusement. Wow, she's an even worse person than I imagined. I already didn't like her because the reality TV show told me that she's a cheating skank. You mean she's a murderer too?" And people don't even realize that this desensitization is happening because they've made her a meme. Like, they view her as content independent of her trauma, and that comes from the fact that true crime content is so normalized and so pervasive and often not handled well. It's very easy to fuck up, which is why my recommendation is and always has been to consume actual reporting from people who are trained in ethics and know how to report on these cases with a level of sensitivity and knowledge needed to avoid dehumanization and victim blaming, and in some cases straight up inaccuracies. And on a much deeper level, I'll just say it, some of you bitches are so addicted to this brain rotting nonsense that you don't actually take murder and tragedy seriously. And this goes beyond Gypsy. I'm talking about the wannabe detectives who were on TikTok trying to falsely accuse people of the Idaho college murders, or people pretending to use Ouija boards to talk to Madeline McCann. You know, I get it. People have dark humor. There are people who personally experience dark trauma that like to joke about it online. I'm not talking about that. At its core, I'm talking about people who are so desensitized to this shit that all they do is exploit the dead and can't give the bare minimum common decency and respect to those who are still living. And if you're listening to this perspective for the first time and you're like, wow, I've actually never thought about that and I've been complicit in this kind of behavior before, that's okay. That's what I'm here for. We can all do better, we can all be better, and most importantly, we can all try our best to unlearn the toxic behavior that these apps normalize and reinforce. And if you disagree with anything that I've said here today, any of the points I've made, that's cool. Leave me alone about it. Bye!